Have you ever realized that money in the wrong hands is just paper, but money in the hands of a person with kingdom revelation becomes a seed that can feed generations? The tragedy is, most people are not broke because they lack opportunity. They are broke because they lack the spiritual intelligence to multiply what's already in their hands. Right? Now economies are shaking, currencies are losing value, and fear is spreading faster than faith. People are hoarding, panicking, and chasing survival. But in the midst of this chaos, there is a psalm, a divine blueprint that carries the power to turn every dollar you hold into a multiplying harvest. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-rich-on-purpose principle. Picture this, a shepherd leading his sheep through barren hills into a lush green valley where streams run clear and still. The sheep have the same legs they had in the wilderness, but under the shepherd's guidance, those same legs now carry them into abundance. The difference wasn't their ability. The difference was who was leading them. Psalm 23 is more than a comforting poem at funerals. It is an economic, emotional, and spiritual masterclass in how heaven's resources flow to earth. Every line is a wealth principle hidden in plain sight, waiting to be unlocked. And today, I'm going to walk you through 8 life-changing principles straight from this psalm that will take you from confusion to clarity, from fear to faith, and from survival to kingdom purpose. If you're ready for change, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Someone else's freedom might be waiting on your breakthrough. Multiplication begins when you know your true source. When David begins Psalm 23, with "The Lord is my shepherd," he is not writing poetic sentiment. He is announcing a legal covenant. In the ancient world, to declare someone your shepherd was to acknowledge their ownership, protection, and responsibility over you. Shepherds own the sheep. They decide where the sheep go, what they eat, and how they are cared for. The sheep's survival does not depend on their own skill, but on the shepherd's commitment. If God is your shepherd, that means your resources, provision, and multiplication do not depend on your talent, your economy, or your connections. They depend on Him. The very first law of kingdom wealth is recognizing God as your source, not your job or business. Too many people treat their employer, their customers, or their bank account as their shepherd, the one they follow, trust, and depend on. But if those things are your shepherd, you will live in constant instability. A business can fail. A job can be lost. A client can change their mind. But your shepherd never resigns, never bankrupts, never lays you off. The moment you shift your heart from, "My paycheck is my provider," to, "The Lord is my provider," you open a supernatural economy over your life. Every financial harvest begins with a seed. But the source of that seed is God. He gives you breath, health, creativity, and favor. Your company may issue your paycheck, but God issued your skill set. Your business might generate sales, but God generated the ideas. In the natural world, your income seems to flow from human systems. In the kingdom, those systems are just channels. The shepherd is the well. If one channel closes, he can open another in a single day. Sometimes from a place you never expected. When you truly see Him as shepherd, 2 things happen. You stop panicking when one source dries up. If a river stops flowing, the shepherd will lead you to another. You invite divine multiplication. God doesn't just replace, He increases. Sheep multiply under a good shepherd's care. So will your resources. That is why a psalm like this can multiply every dollar you hold, because it forces you to align with heaven's economy instead of the world's fear. I remember sitting with a man whose business was in crisis. A major contract that supplied 70% of his revenue was suddenly canceled. He said, "If this client walks away, I'm done. My family will be ruined." I asked him, "Who is your shepherd, your client, or your God?" He went silent. Then tears filled his eyes. "I've been treating my client like my provider," he admitted. That night, instead of calling lawyers or begging for the contract back, he prayed Psalm 23. He told God, "You are my shepherd. Lead me to my next pasture." Within 2 weeks, a completely unrelated company, one he had never pitched to, contacted him for a project. Not only did it replace his lost revenue, but it paid 30% more than the previous client. When you make the shepherd your source, you give him permission to bypass human limitations right now. Take a moment and identify honestly what you have been treating as your source. Is it your paycheck, your business, your spouse's income, your investments? Now, in faith, say this aloud. The Lord is my shepherd, not my paycheck, not my boss, not the economy, not my clients. I follow him, I trust him, and I depend on him. Write that down somewhere. You will see it daily. Every time fear of lack tries to creep in, declare it again. This shift is not just spiritual, it's practical. Once you know God is your shepherd, you start making decisions based on trust, not desperation. You stop clinging to channels that have dried up, and you stay open for God to guide you to the next green pasture. And here's the truth. If he is truly your shepherd, lack is temporary, but increase is inevitable. Lack is not just financial, it's a mindset. When David declares, "I shall not want," he is making a radical faith statement. He's not saying, "I won't have desires." He's saying, "I will never be in a state of lack, because my shepherd meets every need before it becomes an emergency." This is not passive optimism. It's a covenant position. In the kingdom, want is not just about money. You can have a large bank account and still be in want emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. You can also have very little materially and yet live without want, because your inner life is anchored in God's provision. Want is a posture of fear. Contentment is a posture of trust. When your heart rests in the shepherd's care, you step out of the restless pursuit of more for survival's sake, and you enter the flow of abundance that has no end. Contentment is not settling for less than God's best. It's refusing to panic when you don't yet see what you need. It is living in such deep trust that you believe God will supply, guide, and provide, no matter what is in your hand right now. In the financial realm, fear of lack makes people hoard, grasp, and cling to every dollar. But hoarding is not wisdom. It is distrust disguised as caution. The shepherd's economy operates differently. What you release in faith returns multiplied. Psalm 23:1 is an economic law. Because the Lord is my shepherd, there will never be a gap between my need and his supply. This mindset removes you from the panic economy of the world and places you in the provision economy of the kingdom. On a practical level, this doesn't mean you stop budgeting or stewarding your resources wisely. It means you manage money from a place of peace, not from the desperation of fear. You still plan, but you don't worship the plan. You still save, but you don't trust the savings more than you trust God. I once knew a single mother of 3 who was living paycheck to paycheck. Every month, she would say, "I don't know how I'm going to make it." Her words created a constant atmosphere of want. One day in church, she heard a teaching on Psalm 23. She wrote the words, "I shall not want," in big letters and put them on her refrigerator door every morning. No matter what her bank account said, she declared it out loud. A few weeks later, her neighbor lost his job and had no food for his kids. She had only $50 left for the week, but she felt prompted to buy them groceries. It made no sense logically, but she obeyed. The very next day, she received an unexpected letter from the government saying she had overpaid taxes years ago. The refund was 3 times the amount she had given. Her testimony was simple. "The day I started declaring I shall not want, I stopped living in fear of lack. And when I gave from my little, God multiplied my much." Right now, take inventory of your heart. Are you living in a mindset of want, always afraid you won't have enough? Or are you living in a mindset of contentment, fully persuaded that God's supply is constant? Write down these words and keep them where you can see them daily. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, not for food, not for shelter, not for opportunity, not for favor. Each time you speak it, you're not just reciting scripture, you're aligning your spirit with heaven's economy. The key to multiplication is not waiting until you have plenty to give, invest, or sow. It's trusting God with what you have now, knowing there is no such thing as not enough in His hands. If He truly is your shepherd, then lack is not your portion. Abundance is. And that abundance begins not in your wallet, but in your mind. If you'd like, I can now fully expand key point 3. He makes me lie down in green pastures, the economy of rest. So the teaching keeps flowing with revelation and real life application. Money multiplies when peace governs your decisions. When David writes, He makes me lie down in green pastures, he's describing more than a moment of comfort. He's revealing an economic principle. Rest is a strategy for increase. In the natural world, sheep will not lie down unless they feel completely safe and satisfied. Green pastures mean provision, nourishment, and security. The shepherd doesn't simply feed his sheep. He leads them to a place where they can rest in abundance without fear of predators or scarcity. In our fast-paced culture, rest is often seen as laziness, and constant hustle is seen as the only way to survive. But in the kingdom, rest is a demonstration of trust. It says, my shepherd is working while I am resting. I am not the source. He is. The economy of the world says if you don't keep moving, producing and grinding, you will lose everything. The economy of the kingdom says, when you rest in God's presence and direction, you position yourself to receive supernatural strategies that multiply what you already have. Rest is not the absence of work. It's the absence of anxiety while you work. Sheep in a green pasture can graze without constantly scanning for danger because they trust their shepherd's watchfulness. When you live in the economy of rest, you stop making money decisions from a place of fear. You stop chasing every opportunity out of desperation. You wait for the Spirit to guide you to the right ones. And when you move with precision, not panic, even in business or personal finance. Rest allows you to think clearly. Many bad investments are made because people feel rushed or pressured. Rest slows you down enough to hear God's yes or no before you commit. I knew a trader who spent 14 hours a day glued to his screens, terrified that if he looked away, he'd miss the market's next big move. He barely slept. He couldn't enjoy time with his family. Yet, despite all the effort, his account kept shrinking. One day, in frustration, he went for a walk instead of watching the market. He prayed, Lord, I'm exhausted. I don't even know if I'm supposed to keep doing this. In that quiet moment, an idea came to him, a simple, low-risk strategy he had ignored before because it seemed too slow. He decided to test it within a month. His account was not only recovering, it was growing steadily. He told me later, the best trade I ever made was to rest. That's when I heard God's strategy. That's the economy of rest. You are more productive when peace governs you than when panic drives you. Ask yourself today, am I lying down in green pastures or am I constantly running in barren fields? Barren fields are places of constant hustle without fruit. You're always busy, always drained, and always worried. Green pastures are places where you can breathe, think, pray, and move with confidence because you know your shepherd is watching over you. Take one day this week, even a few hours, if a whole day seems impossible, to step back, disconnect from constant striving, and intentionally seek God for clarity. I will not live in fear of stopping. My shepherd leads me to green pastures, and I receive his rest as a strategy for increase. When you rest in him, you don't lose ground, you gain divine direction. If you allow the shepherd to make you lie down, you will find that green pastures are not just about comfort, they are about positioning, and positioning is everything when it comes to multiplication. If you'd like, I can now move to key point 4. He leads me beside still waters, the flow of provision, which will build on this idea by showing how peace opens the channel for wealth to flow. Would you like me to continue principle? God's provision flows best in the atmosphere of peace and guidance. When David writes, "He leads me beside still waters," he's painting a picture of stability, refreshment, and life. In biblical imagery, water represents the Spirit, the Word, and provision. But here's the key. The water is still, not chaotic. Sheep will not drink from fast, moving, noisy streams. If the water is turbulent, they will stay thirsty rather than risk danger. A good shepherd will find a calm, safe place for his sheep to drink deeply. Spiritually, this is a powerful financial and life principle. God will lead you to provision that does not require you to compromise your peace or your values. If the opportunity is full of fear, manipulation, and frantic striving, it's not your still water. Still waters are not stagnant waters. They are steady. The flow is real, but it's gentle and secure. That's how kingdom provision works. It's consistent, dependable, and life-giving. The world often tries to lure us into fast, moving waters, high-pressure deals too good to be true schemes, or environments where the risk to your soul is higher than the potential profit. At first, these streams look exciting, but in reality, they keep you in survival mode, constantly fighting currents just to stay afloat. When the shepherd leads you beside still waters, he is leading you into a rhythm where your provision comes with peace. That doesn't mean there are no challenges. It means the challenges don't disturb the core calm of your spirit. In practical terms, this might look like choosing work that aligns with your God-given purpose, even if it doesn't offer instant riches, walking away from a high-paying job that drains your soul and damages your family life, investing in ways that bring steady, ethical returns instead of chasing reckless gains. Still waters are where you can breathe while you drink. I once knew a young man who got caught up in a flashy investment scheme. It promised enormous returns in a very short time. The pressure to act fast was intense. He was told that if he didn't invest immediately, he'd miss out forever. Against his better judgment, he emptied his savings into it. For the first few months, it looked like it was working. But soon, cracks appeared. The company became harder to reach, payments slowed, and eventually, it collapsed completely. He was devastated, not just financially, but emotionally. Later, in prayer, he told God, "I knew I felt anxious when I made that decision. I ignored your still waters." He made a commitment that from then on, he would only step into opportunities where he had peace. 2 years later, God led him into a small, honest business partnership. It didn't make him rich overnight, but over time, it grew steadily. Today, he not only replaced what he lost, he surpassed it, and he did it without losing his peace call to reflection, faith, action. Ask yourself right now, am I drinking from still waters, or am I fighting to drink from a rushing stream? God's provision doesn't require you to live in constant stress, compromise your integrity, or damage your relationships. If the path to getting money is costing you peace, it's not still water. It's dangerous water. Pray this today, Lord. Lead me to the still waters you have prepared for me. I reject opportunities that bring anxiety and confusion. I receive provision with peace. And remember, the shepherd doesn't just lead you anywhere. He knows exactly where the still waters are. Your part is to follow his leading, even if the path seems slower than you'd like. When you allow him to lead you to still waters, you stop living thirsty. You drink deeply, you are refreshed, and you have the strength to keep walking into greater abundance without being swept away by the chaos of the world's systems. Your outer wealth can never exceed your inner health. When David writes, "He restores my soul," he's describing something far deeper than emotional comfort. In Hebrew, the word restore carries the meaning of to bring back, repair, or make whole again. The soul represents the mind, will, and emotions. The part of you that makes daily decisions. In financial life, your soul plays a huge role. You can have all the right opportunities, but if your mind is filled with fear, your will is paralyzed by doubt, or your emotions are controlled by past disappointments, you will sabotage your own multiplication. God knows this. That's why before he leads you into greater wealth, he often begins by healing the places in your soul that poverty, loss, and fear have wounded. Spiritual plus practical explanation. Many people carry money wounds without realizing it. These wounds might come from growing up in a home where there was never enough, watching parents fight about money, experiencing sudden loss or bankruptcy, being betrayed in a financial deal. Such experiences leave scars. Even when God begins to bless you, those wounds can make you afraid to take healthy risks, unable to enjoy what you have because you're waiting for it to disappear, overly controlling with money, or recklessly impulsive with it. When your shepherd restores your soul, he replaces fear with faith, anxiety with peace, and distrust with confidence in his provision. This restoration is not just spiritual therapy, it's financial strategy. Because a restored soul makes wise decisions, hears God clearly, and handles abundance without self-sabotage. On a practical level, this restoration often happens through prayer, meditation on Scripture, forgiving those who hurt you financially, and renewing your mind with God's promises. I once counseled a man who had gone through a devastating business failure. He had poured his heart and savings into a company only to watch it collapse during a recession. For years afterward, he refused to start anything new. Anytime someone mentioned a business idea, he would shut it down immediately. His words were always, "It's too risky. I can't go through that pain again." When we studied Psalm 23 together, the phrase, "He restores my soul," hit him hard. He realized he had been living with an unhealed wound. The shepherd was offering him not just another opportunity, but a new heart toward opportunity. He began to pray daily, "Lord, restore my soul from the fear of loss." Over time, God healed the sting of that past failure. He slowly started investing again, not recklessly, but with spirit, led confidence. Within 3 years, he had built a business that was more stable and profitable than his first one had ever been. He told me, "The money didn't change. First, my soul did. And when my soul was restored, my life multiplied." Pause for a moment and ask yourself, are there wounds in my soul that are blocking my ability to receive or enjoy provision? Maybe you've been blessed before, but something went wrong and you lost it. Maybe you grew up hearing, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "We can't afford." That so often, that lack feels more natural to you than abundance. Today, let the shepherd restore your soul. Pray this aloud. "Lord, heal me from every fear, trauma, and disappointment connected to money. Remove the pain of the past and give me a fresh mind, a renewed heart, and a peaceful spirit. I trust you to lead me into new provision without fear." A restored soul makes space for restored finances. When your inner world is whole, you can steward outer wealth with wisdom, courage, and joy. When the shepherd restores your soul, he's not just repairing damage, he's preparing capacity. Because in the kingdom, God won't just give you more. He'll make you more so that the more doesn't destroy you.